From Wacko Chaco Studio, I am Ashwin Chaco, and this is The Fruitful Life, a show about the business of creativity and the stories behind the creators that have made their dreams a reality. Hey folks, welcome to The Fruitful Life. Zach OHora.
Yeah. Ashwin, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining me. Would you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah. My government name is Zachariah OHora, which is a mouthful. So I also go by Zach OHora. My friends call me Fuzzy Town, and I I write and illustrate picture books for kids of all ages, and I'm also a show creator of the PBS Kids show, Carl the Collector, animated show about an autistic raccoon and his friends and their adventures, among other things.
Great. Before we get into it, I'm
Yeah,
curious, your last name, O'Hara, are you
yeah,
Irish descent?
fully Irish. I- it's confusing because in the 90s, like when things started getting online and computerized, the apostrophe would throw everybody off, and I would
Yeah,
never, like, if I, got a reservation for a hotel or a restaurant or a car or whatever it was, the computer could never find it, and I'd have to like do four different spellings. Everyone on goes to O'Hara anyway, but the apostrophe, it's before computers would be like, okay, we know that this is probably, this word.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I dropped it, and now it's just like it's just caused human confusion now, and the computers understand it. I'm stuck with it at this point, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but I'm in Ireland. So
Oh,
when
really?
I said,
I
yeah,
didn't
when I
know
saw
that.
your
Yeah.
name, I was like, oh, he
Nice.
must be Irish.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fully. Where do you live?
I live in Belfast.
Oh,
I
nice.
used to live in Dublin and I recently moved
Yeah.
down. Oh, well, moved up to
Nice.
Belfast.
I've
But
I've never been, but it's high on my list of places to visit just to get a vibe and see where my people came from.
yeah, yeah. Well, if you come, I'll show
It's
you
very
around
charming.
town.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I've been told, like, when I found out where all my family's from. Can we swear on this or no? Is it
Yeah, it's fine.
can you cut it out?
Yeah.
I was living in San Francisco, and I had met all these Irish guys, and they needed a goalie for their soccer team, and it's like, I used to play. I could kind of, I guess I could do that or whatever. And I was kind of dating their one female roommate, and I got talked into it after a few pints, and they're like, "Oh, you're Irish. Where are you from?" And I'm like, County Mayo." They're like, "Ah, it's a bunch of sheep fuckers out there. You're a sheep fucker." I'm like, all right. Sure.
That's wild. That's wild.
But yeah, haven't made the trip yet. I have some good friends that live in Dublin and have promised to visit and haven't gotten around to it. And there was definitely like times where things were kind of open there, where it was like, ooh, maybe I could get a dual citizenship and flee the country and go back to the motherland, but that didn't work out.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. And I'm looking forward to getting deeper into your family. Well, not so much your family, your history. But before we
Yeah.
do, the first question I like to ask is, if you could be a fruit, what fruit would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good question. What fruit would I be? At the risk of I don't want it to sound dirty, but I'd probably want to be a banana because I love bananas and they're just so portable, and it's like the perfect fruit that comes with its own packaging that it's just sometimes it's just what you need.
Yep, yep. I'm surprised you didn't pick a fuzzy fruit. So-
That's true. Like a kiwi or something would probably be like the right, yeah.
But yeah.
Uh, there
So
probably was a fuzzy banana. I
yeah.
think there used to be like thousands of kinds of bananas until that one guy was like, okay, this is the one that grows the best. This is a banana from now on.
Yeah, yeah. I'll have to look that up. If there's a fuzzy banana, we'll make it happen.
Yeah, fuzzy banana would be ideal.
So, when were you always creative, or is this something that you developed as you got older? Did you always know you wanted to be an illustrator? Tell us a little bit about what you were like as a kid.
Yeah. As a kid, I grew up in a very, my house, my parents became very religious when I was very little. And then when that happened, all media and entertainment was banned from the house. So there was no television and no radio and no records and any of that kind of stuff. But there were books. And so I spent a lot of time reading and drawing. And I've always been drawing, right out of the gate, never stopped, just like every kid does. And
Mm,
and when I was bored in school, I was, back in the day when you actually got textbooks in school, I couldn't help myself and I'd draw on the textbook in the margins and then get in trouble. And then my parents would have to pay to replace the book and stuff like
yeah.
that, or draw on the desk or whatever. And it was just like, I couldn't stop myself. It was like, yeah, I knew I was going to get in trouble and I was just like bored and doodling so right out of the gate, um, I was always drawing, but I had, when I was in third grade, we had these art teachers that came in, and this is like the late 70s. I'm pretty old, and um, it was a substitute art teacher, and she just brought like her friend with her, and she was like super, all Fleetwood Mac'd out and all like gypsy, witchy woman. And
Right.
she had dark hair and her friend was blonde. It was like full on, like if, Hart or Fleetwood Mac just like rolled into your third grade classroom at their peak. And they made us do this. And I think I still have it around somewhere. Um, you just took these yarns, these string, and you put it underneath a piece of paper, and you just took a crayon and you colored over it, and you made these little patterns or whatever. And they went around and were checking things out, and they saw mine, and they looked at it, and they're like, "Oh, you're an artist or whatever." And I'm like, "Well, I am." And they're like, "What's your sign?" I'm like, "I don't know what that means. I'm in third grade." They're like, "When's your birthday?" And I told them, they're like, Scorpio. I knew it. You are an artist. And that was like the first moment where I was like, yeah, yeah, okay, I'm an artist. Like, these witches just told me that, based on my astrological sign and this string that I colored, like I'm in. Like if so anyway, that was sort of like the first moment of like, oh, this could be an identity, and like maybe this is me, that something
Right.
I didn't, I was just doing what I do, but like for someone to recognize it, and plus it was like pretty grown up girls. It was like, oh yeah, 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 okay. This is me now.
The cosmos had spoken.
It really was a moment.
Right.
You know, uh, Not to make it too long of an answer, but the next year when I was in fourth grade, my parents moved around a lot. Like we lived in different apartments, and there was always another kid on the way, and we'd have to move. And so we moved across the city, and I went to a new school. I didn't know anybody. And back then, back to the textbook thing, like you had to wrap your textbooks in like like we used the paper bags from the grocery store to cover them to protect them so they were still in good shape when you returned them at the end of the year. And then of course you had to decorate them and put your stickers and all your stuff or drawings. And I was like, I got really good at drawing like Garfields and Smurfs. And I got
Nice.
a little like there was this one girl in class again. And she was just like, "Hey, I love those Smurfs. Can you draw one on my book?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that." And like I knew she liked Michael Jackson, and so I made like this Michael Jackson Smurf with like a one, glittery glove and like the glasses and stuff. And she gave me like a Twix bar like after lunch, and it was like so it's basically like my first paid illustration job. And that like
Nice.
kind of spread to other kids, and they were like, "Oh, you draw this thing on mine, and I'll give you a candy bar if you draw on my book." So that was really, where my career took off, and I'm still getting paid about the same. Seems like some days, but it's okay.
Well, I think the value would have seemed way more when you were a kid.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, 100 grand bar was really seemed like 100 grand at the time.
So then, obviously, you were super creative kid. You've kind of found your niche as like the artist kid in school. What happened after that? Like, did you go to college for art? Did you start freelancing straight away because you were already being paid in Twix bars? I mean, You could only go up from there, right?
You can only, yeah, exactly. Right up to Reese's peanut butter cup.
Yeah.
Uh, like I kept drawing, I kept, making art and stuff like that, and took art classes. I didn't go to college until much later. Like I
Right.
knew my parents couldn't afford it, and it was just kind of I was the oldest of five kids, and they didn't have any guidance to be like, hey, like they were very encouraging, which was cool. Like they always got me
Yeah.
supplies. They're like, yeah, you should be an artist, and yeah, you should go to college for that, or whatever. But without any like guidance to be like, here's how you do it, or here's the process, or because they didn't know either. So I kind of had a period of I got really into Kerouac and the Beats and hitchhiked cross country and ended up in San Francisco. And I finally like I started taking classes at night at the local city college, which were like incredibly cheap. And then I put my portfolio together and then went to I applied for one school, got in, and was like, okay, this is where I'm going in San Francisco and Oakland. At the time, it was called the California College of Arts and Crafts because it was like built around the like crafts movement of like the early 1900s. And they've since dropped that, so it's the California College of Art.
Right.
And I went for illustration because I was really into printmaking and painting and stuff, but illustration, I was like, okay, I think I can get a job doing this and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I was always kind of on the fence of like, maybe I'll just do printmaking. And, I got sidetracked into trying to be a fine artist, capital A artist or whatever a few times. So it was a long circuitous route.
Yeah. Yeah. And then for you, when did it start clicking that you could start doing illustration as a job? Or, I mean, did you do several jobs at the same time to maintain your illustrative career? What sort of solidified that path for you?
Um, Yeah, what? I got some jobs like while I was still in school, which was very encouraging. Posters for the Fillmore, which was kind of a dream job, for different musical acts. And then like the original like dot-com boom was happening, and I was kind of in one center of it, in San Francisco. So like suddenly people had money and like wanted, needed illustrations and stuff.
Yeah.
So I got some jobs that way, but I graduated college, dot-com collapsed, the city kind of collapsed, and I was trying to look for editorial work and just hustling my portfolio everywhere for years. And I would get a job here and there, but I wasn't a designer. Like I didn't, one thing at the school didn't really offer at the time was like collaboration with designers or just having illustrators like have design skills, which I've learned on the job over the years.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I didn't have any of those real skills. I could just draw and paint. So I struggled for years, getting editorial jobs here and there, but always having to have, a day job of some kind,
Right.
and like
Yeah.
working on stuff at work, at the job and then again at night and things like that. Until we moved to New York and I kept hustling my portfolio around and finally came around to, I always wanted to do picture books like since high school when like an art teacher introduced me to like John Sheska, um, his book, The True Story of the Wolf and the Three Little Pigs, like blew my mind. And I was
Right.
like, oh,
Right.
this is what I want to do. And it just took me like, more than 10 years to like come back around to it. And
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
very opaque world. I'm not sure if you do picture books as well?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
know you
Yeah.
like you do like everything as well, right? Like
Yeah. 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 Writing
um
and drawing and everything.
yeah, so like it's an opaque world just to break into. You're like, who do I
Yeah.
send this to and how do I find that person's name and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. So it took a lot of years of, rejections and struggling and poverty.
Yeah. So, uh, while you were struggling, what kept you going? Like, what was the motivator for you to, push past that storm to be like, okay, I know this is what I have to do. How do I get there?
Yeah. You know, I didn't have any other skills and I was not employable otherwise. I've done a lot of, like let's say menial work, but like I worked in a sign shop and which sounds way more arty than it is. It was not an art situation. It was like digging holes and cementing posts into the ground and that kind of thing.
Right, right.
And different like kind of light construction jobs and stuff. So like I knew I could always like do stuff like that, but I hated it. Like I was just like I can't do this. So it was kind of like this is my only like it's this or dealing drugs or something, or something that was like definitely going to have me end up in jail.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I have to, like real credit due to my wife Lydia, she was a designer at the time. She's an artist. She encouraged me and she was also like holding down the fort, and keeping us afloat money wise and was just like, no, this is what you need to be doing. And like, just more people need to see it. And so she was like very encouraging. I wouldn't have been able to like get over the hump without a great partner. Uh,
Mm,
but at the same time, there wasn't anything else that I was going to be interested in doing or good at. So it was kind of like this just has to work. Like I just have to make this work and just keep plugging away at it. And I know that especially like in New York and stuff, like I'm not the best. Like there's a trillion other like incredibly talented and smart people and connected people.
yeah.
Um, but I just need to find like my little corner of this universe.
And how did you go about finding that corner? What was your breakthrough moment there? How did you get into children's books eventually?
So I had an idea of like this like dachshund, who like played drums, who wanted to be a drummer at night and be in a band, but he worked at a pizza place during the day. And I just thought it was really funny with like his little arms, like trying to be a drummer. And I shopped that book around for like 3 years of rejections, and it never got published. But
Right.
finally, I got to a point where one publisher was like, "Hey, we really like the art. If you got any other ideas, then come back to us with them." And people would
Right.
take like months and months to get back to you, and you were kind of just always in the state of like, "All right, maybe this is it. Maybe I'm going to get this
Yeah.
deal."
Yeah.
And in an act of desperation, I was talking to my wife and she's like, well, you know what? Writers are supposed to write what they know, right? Like, so she kind of like made up a list of like annoying things. She's like, you snore. So, like, why not write about snoring or something? And YouTube had come out and there was like this like kind of viral video of like these otters holding hands in an aquarium. I'm sure you've seen it, and they drift apart and then they reach out and they grab each other again. And I
Yeah.
started to
Yeah.
like research that, and I was like, oh yeah, like otters snoring would be a problem if they all hold hands while they take naps. And so I wrote this thing in like a couple days, sent it right back out to them with a couple images of art, and then like the next week they were like, we're gonna buy this. And it was like a very different response from everything before, where I was waiting for months to get an
Yeah.
answer, a rejection form letter. So that was like the moment, but that was that was I'm trying to think of the timing. That was like probably 8 years after I was out of school,
Right.
and
Yeah.
like three of those were just like floundering around. Like I didn't even know like what page count was or anything. I just like printed out, made a book, and like made the whole book and was like shopping it around. And people are like, this guy clearly doesn't know what he's doing. So we're not hiring this fool. And I didn't even like have kids, and I didn't even read any books. It was like I went about it in like the dumbest way. Like I there was probably a shorter path if you're determined enough, that if I just asked more questions. And obviously there's more resources now because this is sort of like the internet was just getting going and
Yeah. Yeah.
early 2000s kind of thing. So I completely forgot. I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah. It did. It did. You made the Otter book, and that sort of broke you into the industry. But
yeah.
having succeeded with that book, was it then? free flowing from then? Did you learn from that process, or was it a battle every time you wanted to get a book done?
It's a battle every time.
Yeah,
I was under, again, under like impression, like the wrong impression about everything
right.
because I just made it up in my head. I was like, oh, well, now I'm a published author, and this book has gotten some notice and notoriety, and like it should be easy. So I just, like throwing out half-baked ideas, and they're like, yeah, this, we'd like to see something a little more finished. Do you have any other ideas? And or
Right.
like there's too many ABC books out there. This is kind of a tired idea. And I realized I had to do a bunch of research to like what's out there in the market, like what are other people doing? What are like, even being aware of trends because picture books go in trends too.
Yeah.
Um, no, I found honestly every endeavor that I've done creatively, nothing has ever very only in a couple instances has it ever accidentally become easy, but it only in that moment. Like everything up to that moment was hard, and even I have this show with PBS, and it took almost 10 years to develop that show, and it was just like incredible, like one hurdle after another, like funding, finding money, and like figuring out. I didn't know anything about television production. I didn't know anything about animation. So everything is you might see someone's stuff all over the internet, and they're getting interviewed, and people know their name or whatever within whatever world you're in, and it
Yeah.
seems like, oh, everything must be easy for them. It's not.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
this too. It's like plenty of things get that you love get rejected all the time, and you just have to like just brush it off and be like, you know what? Okay, I got 10 more ideas maybe. If I have enough coffee and I go take a walk, I'll figure
Yeah.
something else out because especially if it's the right opportunity.
Mm,
Like I'm not going to let this pass, so like I'm going to just figure this out. But yeah, I don't think maybe for somebody, I think you don't see it in the front facing world of like social media and everything else, like all the behind the scenes struggle
yeah.
that people go through to make a project. Um, all you see is like the final project, and you're like, oh, their life must be perfect and easy, and it's like it never is.
Well, that's part of why I started this podcast is to go behind the scenes and kind of have those conversations so that it sheds light on the reality that, social media, as amazing as it is to connect people, you're only seeing the tip of the iceberg and you haven't seen the 20 years they slogged before they got their
Totally.
overnight success, as it were, because they had
Yeah,
done all that work and then like suddenly something hit and it like
yeah,
it just seemed to work.
yeah,
For myself as well, I was working as a graphic designer, then art director in advertising for 10 years before I could then transition into illustration, and then another
yeah.
year or two before I could start doing children's books.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I would imagine that 10 years of doing all those other things were great learning process. Like
oh
obviously you were
yeah.
doing your job and you knew what you were doing, but
Yeah.
all that 10 years like probably really helped you to, do your other stuff and understand how things work and all that good stuff. Like,
Yeah, it was huge. Like, I'm actually really grateful now that I came from a design background because it
yeah,
means I'm better at doing layouts. I have an understanding what the art director is looking for. I make it easy make their job easy. So
yeah.
then they want
You've
to
been on the
work
other
with you
side of it.
again.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I'm curious for yourself, through that process, through that learning process of the last few years,
yeah,
working through, have you come up with a system for yourself when developing ideas, developing stories, or is it still a wild grab for whatever comes to your head and then you're throwing it down and trying
yeah.
to figure it out?
It's still kind of a wild grab because
Right,
I
right.
think in the beginning you have to be as open as possible to be like, okay, and you don't always want to. The trap is that everyone wants you to at this point once you're sort of done some things and people know who you are. The good news is they just want you to do what you do. But the
Right.
bad news is they also often want you to copy yourself, and you don't want to do that because it's like
Yeah.
you always want to be growing and changing as an artist, and it's like okay. I got my one style. For me, it's one style, but like,
Yeah.
how can I keep continually push that just to keep it interesting? It's like, I don't want to make the same book over and over. I mean, I probably could, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I in some ways I have. When I look back, I'm like, oh, again, that's just another like little crappy hero's journey with like a different fuzzy animal. And like there's like different elements of the story, but it's still kind of the same story. And I thought I had something totally new. Um, so in some ways, I don't panic, like in the beginning, I would fully freak out.
Hmm.
Like, okay, I got to make this the best job ever. And, and I would like just try to do something I'd never done before, and it
Right.
wouldn't be that great. And then the art director would just be like, could you, I don't know, here's 5 things from your website. Can you just like do something like this? And you're like, oh, okay, okay. And I'd have to come back around, like fully start over.
Right.
And, all of those jobs were like pulling teeth. Like the end result ended up being okay, but I had to go through a
Yeah.
bunch of like teeth gnashing and, to get to that point. There's
Right.
less of that now. And there's things I figured out where it's like if you want to like present a few ideas to an art director or somebody to give
Hmm.
them a choice, everyone loves to have a choice.
Yeah.
Don't send anything that you're even halfway
Yeah.
about, just to give you an extra, because inevitably they're going to pick the shittiest idea,
Uh,
or they're
uh,
going to take your crappiest idea and want to jam it into what you think is your best idea, the one you want them to pick. You're like, yeah, I like these two, like combine them. You're like, oh man. So I realized, don't do that. Don't just like, if it's not like, if you're not 100% behind that thing, and you're like, oh, this seems like what I think they want,
Hmm.
or whatever it is, like, don't show that thing because they're gonna pick it, and then then you have to do it, and
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
like in love with it, and it's like it's not going to be as good as like the other things. That is really, it took me a while to learn that and realize that, and that's very helpful. The other thing too, and the like probably the hardest thing is when to say no. Like having enough nightmare clients and stuff where you're like you can see it coming a mile away after a few of them, and
Yeah.
no matter how bad you need money to pay your mortgage or whatever, you're like, oh, I can't. Especially with books where it's a 2-year process,
Yeah.
but like with editorial, or advertising or whatever, it's like there's all kinds of clowns out there who are just like want you to be their hand, and but they want to like transmit their idea, which they don't really have, through
Yeah.
you, and just use you as a tool. And I've realized like once you sniff that out, you're like, just say no. And
Hmm.
that's very hard to do as a freelance person, but even harder when you have a family and everything else too, to just be like, say no to money because it's not worth the nightmare. Your time is better off like creating a project that you really want to get out in the world and sending that out. It might be delayed gratification, and it's obviously not guaranteed, but it's
Yeah.
such a better thing to do for you, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, creatively, to not deal with that one job that you should say no to. That's a tough one to learn. I had to relearn that one a million times.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 100% agree. Those toxic clients that, want to suck everything out of you
Yeah.
and pay you as little as they can.
Yes, that's
It's
always
never,
hand in hand.
yeah. Yeah, they
Or,
seem to be the worst.
yeah. And like if anybody leads with, hey, this is going to be great exposure for you, that's a no.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
those
yeah,
people just don't want to pay you the right money that you deserve, and they're going to be nightmares. It's going to be a million changes.
yeah,
You're going to be like laying awake at night. You're going to, as soon as they come with that kind of thing, and that's their like they're dangling that carrot. I don't care if you're like still in school, right out of school, someone's dangling the like this is going to be real great exposure for you, and here's how many followers we have, and they're like we're going to give you $50. Don't do that job. Like let them
yeah.
find some other person. Like it's going to be a nightmare. It's not worth it. And it never has any of those jobs where I suffered through. Did they ever lead
Mm,
to anything else good? That was never like something that you really loved and were passionate about, that kind of a lot. Either you self created it and made it happen, like a book project or something, or it's just something that like people got what you did and they were cool and they allowed you to be you. Those are
Yeah.
the projects that just like everything, it's total cliche of like following your passion, but like that's the stuff that ends up resonating with people, and that's what gets you other jobs. So you're better off holding out for that situation when you can.
Yeah. Have you come up with a system to kind of vet your clients? Like for myself, I I send out an email asking for a 50% deposit, and if they pay it, then I
Yeah,
know they're going to be good for it.
yeah,
But if they're not willing to, uh, it's negotiable to like up to
yes,
30%, but like
yeah. You got to have that deposit. Yeah,
exactly.
they got to agree to deposits and kill fees, and yes, definitely. Like that makes a big difference, I think.
Yeah.
And also being very clear about how many rounds of changes that you're willing to do, that it's included in that price, and that beyond that, you're going to have to start charging more money. So
Yeah.
they need to be concise about what it is that they want. Yeah, like definitely you have to have those systems, and just, be clear and honest about what it is.
And for yourself, how did you start to figure that out? Because obviously in like art school, they never teach you the business side of things.
Uh,
A lot of it is from experience, but
yeah.
what are some of the your top tips on how to better ensure that you can survive as a freelance illustrator?
Top tips for surviving.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or thriving.
yeah. Thriving ideally. I mean, you have to have like having a thick skin, and realizing that, like we are talking about, that rejection is always going to be
Mm,
part of it. Not to be too precious about every single idea you have. They're not all going to be great. Sometimes the client's right. You know, but I think, creating the work that you want to do for other people, the first thing to do is just like make some work that is like closest to your heart, that like I found like the easiest stuff to make, that like the stuff that was like closest to my heart. Like when I was started out doing the editorial stuff, I was trying to do editorial work, and at the same time I was like making cute cards for my wife, or like if I pissed her off or something and I had to apologize, I'd find the cutest animal, and in like a half an hour, like whip out this little cute character, and salvage my relationship. And but I did that on the side, and I wasn't doing that like professionally. And then
yeah.
like one day, it was like, wait a minute, this is what I should be doing. I should be doing, these cute fuzzy animals, because it's like it didn't seem hard enough. It was just like it was, but that was the thing. And like once I switched to that, uh like things started to click, and I started to get real jobs.
Right.
So the first thing to do is like make sure that what work you're doing is like from you and your heart and what you love to do, and it's not what you think the market can hold, or following some trend of, or whatever is going on at the moment. um that's number one, and creating that work, so you have examples on your website, and only showing the work of the stuff that you would love to do.
Mm,
A lot of art directors, I think, there's some amazing creative art directors, and they're obviously like the best ones are great collaborators, but they also just let you do what you do. But they know well enough to match you to the project, that you're going to be a good match, that you can just do what you do. So presenting that face to the world of like the things that you want to do, that's like closest to what you are, I think is like the number one thing, like not trying to be anything else other than yourself. I think that's huge. And that took me a long time to figure out. I thought I was being myself, but I was also trying to be a professional. And sometimes in the end, art school, you're kind of like, you have this ragtag portfolio. They're like, well, do this and do that. And like,
yeah.
someone's going to ask you how, you got to do this kind of project or whatever. And it's like, those things like might not be you. And so those are the
Mm,
first things you need to dump from your portfolio and just do the things that are like comfortably you. Like that, I think is like the number one thing.
mm,
Like you said, like having your systems of, feeling out the potential client. Are they willing to put a deposit down, put their money where their mouth is?
yeah,
Are they trying to dangle some other elusive carrot to you? Are they trying to make you do like spec work against other people? Like
yeah,
if they're like, hey, could you just do a sample for us and da 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 da, always ask.
yeah,
Like, am I the only person you're approaching? Or are you asking multiple people and force them to tell you?
yeah,
And if they're asking multiple people to do free work, don't do that job either.
yeah,
Like that's another, but all of that stuff I learned from learning the hard way, which is just
right.
my lot in life. It's the only way I really learn by like doing it wrong first or 10 times and then being like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Um, that and it's fun to be an artist and it's awesome to be paid to like follow your passion, but the other thing that no one tells you is that you still have to be a business owner. You still
yeah,
have to be organized. You gotta like hold the deadlines. You have to like manage, you gotta do your taxes, you gotta manage your calendar, you gotta promote yourself, you have to do all the other like business crap and answering emails and all that other stuff. So just be prepared to do that, because that's part of the thing. You can't be, which is fine because like you can't be creative, pumping creative stuff out all the time.
yeah,
Um, but I forget, I don't know where I was going with that, but um, just kind of realizing it's like you are a business, treat yourself like a business, and other people treat you like a business. Because like I think there's a tendency too that um, some people who aren't in creative positions think that creative people are just like grown up children and everything's fun for them and this is fun and it's not a job. It's like, yeah, there's a fun element to it. Like I love getting up in the morning and going into my studio and knowing like I'm going to draw cute bunnies for the day and someone's going to pay me for it eventually. But it's still a job and it's still
yes,
work. And sometimes it's still hell. Um, so don't let anybody like think otherwise, that it's not a real job. I find that that's a that's a never ending sort of thing where people just think you're just playing in a sandbox all day. It's like, no, you're a business owner that does fun, cool stuff that like other people wish they could do.
yeah.
But it's not all fun. And like they say, it's show biz, not show fun.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to something you said. You talked about, pursuing your passion, and I'm curious about that and how that passion that you had evolved into creating your own TV show, because that seems like a very personal show.
Yeah.
What was the process? Where did that project come from? What was the initial seed that inspired it? And then how did you actually get it made?
How much time do you have now? Um, the great thing about making books is that
Yes.
it's like having like portfolios of yourself just out in the world, circulating to all kinds of people. Another thing, like if you're getting into books, is there's nothing more depressing than the day the book publishes because it's like, hey, this book's out, happy pub day or whatever, and you get like an hour of juice, from everyone like saying congratulations, and then nothing changes. And there's,
Yes.
and you have to like wait like a year for like
Uh,
at least 6 months to a year for like to see what that project does and what that book does and like what life it has and who it resonates with. Um, and so like remembering that, I always have to remind myself of that. I had a book
yeah.
come out on Tuesday. I didn't write it, but I illustrated. I'm very proud of it. It's called Kitty Bunkport. It's one of those days you're like, oh, that's right. It's a pub day. It's a marker. You should acknowledge it, but like stuff takes time to like have a life of its own. But the
Yeah.
upside of that is that all those books and stuff are out in the world, And PBS came to me back in 2015 because of a book that I did called Wolfie the Bunny.
Mm.
Uh, and they were aware of a couple other titles that I had done. They're like, "We love your work. We love your stories. We're looking for show creators outside of our usual pool. If you'd ever be interested in like creating a television show, like, the door's open. We'd love to develop it with you." And I was like, hell yeah, this is I couldn't believe they were reaching out to me.
Right,
And
right.
of course, in the back of your mind, and if you're making, even when you're making picture books, you're like, oh, like, the dream would be like, someone knocks on your door and like, we want to option this for a movie or a cartoon series or whatever. You're like, I don't know how this would ever happen, but like, it
Yeah,
could happen. I could win the lottery. Like,
yeah.
someone's got to win. Um, so when they came to me, I was like, oh, this is an opportunity. Like, the door is open. Like, I need to walk through that door and like figure it out. And we spent like 6 or 7 months where I was combing through every rejected book idea I've had, which there's plenty.
Yeah.
Like, how about this? How about this? And just kind of like tweaking them so there'd be like a little PBS, like a little educational.
Right,
And
right.
and I had this character called the Collector. I'm a collector, and I was kind of obsessed with raccoons. And my original story idea was just like a sleeper over idea with like his beaver friend Sheldon, and they try to camp out in the backyard, and they get freaked out and end up going back in the house, and their mom makes some cookies or whatever. And it was a total rejected book story that I had pitched to publishers.
Right.
And at the same time, my kids had started going to school, and they went to an inclusion school. And I do a lot of school visits, so I see a lot of different types of schools all over the map as far as like what kind of funding they have. And but I don't think I'd really been to any inclusion schools. And the idea is essentially that every kid in the district should have the same access in the classroom to like the teacher and learning and interaction, social interaction with the other students, like whatever their needs are. They shouldn't be like squirreled away into, a side room with other people with disabilities or whatever. Just to languish alone with their aides or whatever. So like whatever those kids need to stay in the classroom, they get, whether it's an
Mm.
aid or whether, they have headphones to block out the noise or need to take breaks or take walks, whatever it is. And my kids were just friends with everybody. Like they didn't differentiate, like if a kid was there in a wheelchair or was, severely autistic or whatever it was, they were friends with everybody. And it really struck me that was very different from how I grew up, where anybody with any kind of special needs or anything like was kind of just like locked away with like a gym teacher or something, and you were like, no one talked about it. And I realized, I was like, oh, if kids are exposed to sort of like the full spectrum of humanity, like right out of the gate, when we take the
Mm.
stigma away from it, you can see the humanity in each other and you can be friends, and they're just, everyone's more accepting and empathetic. And I picked up a book by Steve Silverman called Neurotribes, about like neurodiversity in humans. And so I kind of like layered that on to this Carl the Collector character who kind of already seemed like, maybe he's OCD and he has to collect things. And, I was kind of playing off the joke of like raccoons like washing their hands before they eat or something. I don't even
Yeah.
know if that's a real thing, but the autistic thing just seemed like obvious at the
Mm.
time. It was like, oh, like this is happening, and clearly people don't understand it. And obviously when you don't understand stuff, it's easy to fear it or label it
Mm.
a certain way and put it into a box or whatever. And I could see the benefit of taking away that mystery to my kids, and how they accepted other kids. So once I like folded that into it, like PBS was like, yeah, we need this to happen. Um, and then, so we started developing it. It went to a pilot phase first, and that's like right when the pandemic and lockdown happened. So that was like everyone was scrambling,
Gosh.
like, how do we make
Yeah.
this whole thing by Zoom? Um, Even before current issues, like PBS doesn't have a lot of money.
Right.
They will place an order for a show, but you have to find funding from other sources, and you have to get creative to like find that
Wow.
because of the federal laws of like how they get the money. It's like you can't just go to, McDonald's or something and be like, "Hey, I need a few $1 million to make this cartoon," you know. Um, so it every step of the way of that process, and it was hard. And
Mm.
like, I didn't if I had known how long it was going to take, like they were very good about sort of mousetrapping me out of it, like out of a maze, or like, okay, do this, and like, here, let's get the idea and like the initial show bible and the pitch, and like tell us about the characters, and like that was the easy part because like I can make
Yeah.
characters all day. And then we'll we're gonna talk, and I'm like, okay, are we gonna make the pilot? And they're like, everyone loves it, but well, now we're gonna do this thing. And then they kept like pushing the goalposts in a way that was like helped me digest each stage of it.
Right.
uh and it was like a crazy like grad school crash course in how to put together an animation show. So
Mm.
every step of the way was, I'm not gonna lie, it was like incredibly hard, and I was the whole time I was still, I still make books, obviously. That's my real job. I was like, this probably won't happen. Well, I'm gonna see this thing through. I'm not getting paid for years, but
Right.
I'm spending an extreme amount of energy and like mental energy and time. But I still like, it'll probably fall apart, and I'll just sell a book series on Carl the Collector, and he lives in Fuzzy Town and blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
once I kind of had that in as the like backup plan, it didn't
Right.
seem
Right.
like the amount of time I was putting in was like a complete waste.
Right. Right.
And so there were gaps where I just had to work on my actual work to pay my bills, and I would
Mm.
kind of like let that stuff sit, or I was just like frustrated with like um just all the different aspects of it. And also like um learning about autism and stuff. Like, I'm not autistic, I don't have any immediate members of my family that have autism or anything. So it was like a deep dive into understanding that and getting that right. Once we got going, we hired experts and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But you know, it took everything that happened in those 9 years, and like all the testing that PBS did, and all the sort of safeguards to like make sure that it was an authentic show.
Mm.
Like, we have neurodiverse and autistic people on every level of the show, from writers to animators to the director of the animation's grown son is autistic. Anybody who's autistic in the show, the character, autistic person in real life. And we found kids who were not actors to voice these characters, and they're doing an amazing job.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
and testing it with, families with neurodiverse individuals in the family. So like every step along the way, as hard as it was, and
Mm.
how it was so long, all added up to making it what it is, and what a great show it is, and how authentic it is. And that's like resonating with people in a way that's beyond gratifying. It's like humbling, and kind of, I'm like, how did I, like, I'm disassociating that I ever had the idea. It just seemed, I'm like, how did I have this idea for the show? And like, I didn't really realize how it would affect people, even though I
Right.
wanted it to affect people.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but so that was just like a really long process. That part of it was because it was a PBS system, and they have limited resources, and they also want to get things right. It's not like you're making something for a streaming service and they have a certain
Mm.
amount of money for a certain amount of shows to just be like, all right, let's just throw this up there, see what happens, and then it goes into a digital abyss, a year later, because no one cares about it. I'm like, that didn't stick, like whatever.
Yeah.
It was very uh what's the word? Like every step of the way, it was just very intentional. Everything
Mm.
about it was intentional and like really well thought through, which shows in the end product. But it was very challenging, you know, my poor wife had to hear me just like, whine at night and be like, I don't think I could do this, on
Yeah,
top of
yeah,
like, just doing all my other, books are always their own, project of, highs and lows and a roller
yeah,
coaster of, getting those things across the finish line.
yeah. And from this process that you went through, this 10 years of developing this,
Yeah.
what were there certain things that you learned that then enhanced your storytelling aspect in the books that you do, or even in the process you took to approaching books? What were some of your learnings from those 10 years of developing something so big?
Yeah. There were so many things I learned. It'd be hard to
Maybe
like
pick
distill it
pick
down,
two or three.
but specifically to storytelling and
Yeah,
projects,
storytelling.
I think it's made me a better writer because I had to really get deep into writing from different perspectives and kind of understanding like TV, there's some payoffs that kind of, like with books, a lot of the action happens in between the turn pages,
Yeah,
so you're like, you set up a scene and then you flip it. And then you're like, oh, this something happened in between. And you're using your imagination. That's the great power of books.
yeah,
With television, it's like you have to show all of it. Like you can't,
yeah,
like, of course you can cut to a thing sometimes, but you kind of have to show it and show it in a way that's like continuously entertaining and like people get it right away. It's like, oh, okay, this is happening or this just happened or whatever.
yeah.
Um, and collaborating with like a ton of people. I mean,
Mm,
there's literally, 100 or more people behind the scenes working on this, and probably more like 200 people. And, getting all those notes and like sifting through all that stuff and like figuring out, everyone's got their angle of input and they're all
mm,
valid and they're all from, that one point in the process. Like that has been cool and rewarding to work with so many people and collaborate more. It's allowed me to be more open to just like people throwing out ideas and be like, oh yeah, you know what? That's great. I never would have thought of that. Let's do that. But all of that, even when you're coming back to making a book and it's just you, or maybe you and the author, you and the art director and the editor, um, it's helped me be more confident in my storytelling. I never like even ever felt it was even like 10 years of making books where I didn't really say I was an author. I'm like, oh, I'm
right.
a book illustrator who also has to write because, if you want to use your own characters and everything else, it's just easier.
Yeah,
You don't have to share the royalties or, like all that kind of like there's a million reasons why that's a better model. And
yeah,
I always felt like, oh, I'm just faking this, until you like hit a point after 10 years of faking, you're like, oh, you know what? When other people like good friends who I really admire
mm,
send me they're like, hey, what do you think of this story? And you can give them like good feedback, like, oh, what you should do here? This would be really great if we had this, this point in the plot or whatever. And you kind of
yeah,
realize like you're like, oh, I understand the writing process and like what makes a good story way more than I did 10 years ago.
right.
Sometimes it's easier to see it on someone else's thing. Like when it's your own thing, you're so inside it that, it's kind of like how like a good director can make a really crappy movie. And you're like, how did you guys not see this coming? That this movie is a piece of shit.
Yeah, yeah,
But like you're so inside it that like you can't
mm,
always tell what if something's really going to be exceptionally good or not,
yeah,
because
yeah,
generally you're like you feel like it is and you're following that feeling. You're like, okay, this is working, and like we're getting from point A to point B in the story, and this is there's the transformative moment for the character, and this is really going to land with the audience because this is a great moment. And you might still have those things, but they might not connect all up in a way that the audience really connects with. And then
mm,
the other hand, it's like I've had books where I'm like, this is the best book I've ever written, and it just like didn't like no one bought it, And
yeah,
then there's other
yeah,
ones where you're like, and then like they do well.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you can never really tell like how it's going to how the end project is going to do. You just have to like try to put your whole heart into it and really just be like, I'm just going to try and make this the best that I can. The other barometer is like cracking myself up. If I can make myself laugh, I know I'm on the right path of whatever the project is.
yeah.
Uh, but you know, like the all the TV stuff, it's helped. Like I'm working on a graphic novel right now. It's allowed me to like take on bigger projects that I thought I
Mm,
was too lazy, or like I was like, yeah, I want to do this thing, but I don't know if I'm like if I really have it in me. Now I feel like I got stretched to a point where I'm like, you know what, I can do that. It's going to be worth the outcome, and even though it's going to be more work and it takes longer,
mm,
it's worth it. Um, but you know, there's just so many, you know, little things that you end up absorbing that kind of like come out in other areas. Even if you don't use it for the project that you learn the thing on, you end up like getting idea for you know a different project in a different arena, and it like all comes true. So sometimes you can't even tell what those things are that you learned.
right.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And so are you saying the imposter syndrome has slowly dissipated over time through
No,
experience? Or
not at
is it
all.
still there and it's just a question of learning to navigate that as you continue to evolve in your practice?
Yeah, definitely the latter. I think that the imposter syndrome is a moving goalpost in the same way that whatever your like interior ideas of success are,
Yeah.
and you reach those milestones, and you're like, hell yeah, this happened, or like I got this award, or this little nod, or whatever it is. You're like, okay, well, what's next? You know, like
Yeah.
that, like the level of like, there's never like I've made it
Yeah.
moment. But there are like little mini moments where you're like,
Mm,
oh, I always dreamed of this thing and here it is happening. Often I feel like those things happen when you're at your busiest, where you can't even stop to like appreciate. And I'm trying to do that where it's like if you
mm,
have that moment, I was listening to an interview with what's his name? The film director who did like those movies with Tarantino and from Dusk Till Dawn.
right, right.
He did Spy Kids, Rodriguez, what's his name? Roberto Rodriguez.
I think
Is
so.
that his name? Anyway, he was talking about how he talked to his kids about like when you're going through life with projects and stuff that like there's baseline.
Right.
Baseline is like you're okay, you're surviving. Nothing is like that could be like all your projects have been rejected and whatever. You just got you and you know that's fine. That's baseline. That's not below. And then everything above that is above
Mm,
baseline. And then you should take a moment to celebrate that thing. I'm trying to get better about that, of like um, taking those moments where you've like worked really hard and then you kind of have a moment, you're like, whoa, okay, I got this thing across the finish line, you know, go have a nice dinner or something, or just
yeah,
like
yeah.
a moment to recognize uh like okay, this is cool, this is an above baseline moment. And when he kind of said that, so that like when you come back to your baseline is like the rejection line, like you're
Right.
not in a pit where you're like, oh man, I should just go get a job at the post office, or like you know, because I definitely had those thoughts
Yeah,
um
yeah.
where you're like, no, your baseline is like, okay, you're figuring out what's next, and you're just like you're here, you're alive, like you can do
Mm,
anything. And then above that is like when, you know, really cool things happen, and then you should recognize those things. Um, but as far as like, you know, imposter syndrome that everyone feels, that never goes away. Like, you know, there's certain things you can gain confidence about where, you know, you're like,
mm.
okay, I know this is good or this is bad, or, you know, I certainly know when other people's stuff is good or bad. Um, I'm just my opinion. Who cares?
Yeah.
But I don't think that ever goes away. Right
Mm,
along with like whatever whatever level, like the success that you get of a project or notoriety for it or whatever it is, it's like that's cool. That doesn't always translate into like money either. Like it might just be like I used to work at jazz festival in San Francisco and driving around like all these jazz legends who I like worshipped and like had my records like stuffed under the seat to have them sign. And I was like
Nice.
horrified and shocked at how like what regular people they were. Like were clearly not rich and not, even though they were like super famous and, like
Yeah,
living legends. And,
yeah,
that's another thing that I think it's good to recognize that um, being a legend, not that I'm a legend, but like ha having recognizability or like
mm,
acclaim for something,
notoriety.
yeah, isn't doesn't equal money all the time. Like
Right, yeah,
those things can be like inverse or reverse from each other any time.
yeah,
Um, so I think like there, you just always want to do more, but not that you need to like get the bigger award or whatever it is, but it's like you just want to make better work and hope that more people like it and that you're doing a better job instead of like peaking at a certain point and then it's like, well, all right, now what? You go downhill or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Um, like you kind of want to continuously be training and working your way up some imaginary mountain that doesn't really ever have a peak. I think, it just like
it's about the
how
journey.
far can you go? Yes, exactly.
and
That's
and
exactly
how can you move a little bit further than yesterday, and the
exactly.
fact that maybe that feeling keeps that alive for you, so that you're like, I'm not going to settle for where I'm at now. I'm going to
Yeah,
get that little bit better, so that
totally.
I'm not stuck.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly because then what?
Yeah.
And I think all of that is like you are the creative process and making stuff is always faking it until it's real.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's not faking it. It's like you're I hate to use this word, but like you're manifesting it, like
Hmm.
like the idea of like all of reality was a thought first. You know what I mean? It's like that
Mm.
microphone before there were microphones, like someone had to have the thought to figure that thing out and had to make it or anything, your hat. It's like someone had to think of that design and
Yeah,
like and then like create it. And so like that man, there's like that whole stretch of things where between the idea and the thought and like the
yeah,
when it becomes physical reality that seems like you're faking it until you like sort of will it into existence. So like it's very easy to feel like I'm not really doing this, but then you do it,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
So I think
I'd say
that's part
every
of it.
book that we create is a manifestation of your imagination.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
seeing that real time, and you're
yeah,
making it a reality, and
yeah,
then it's a physical book that you're reading to kids, and you know,
yeah, yeah. And then like seeing an effect, and that I mean that's what's
yeah,
great when you're
yeah,
reading it to in real life. You're like, oh, that's right. This is why I'm doing this. Like it's not
yeah,
just for
yeah,
me,
yeah.
and it's like seeing kids get excited about like books are a good tech, like no matter what
Mm,
tech stuff that they have and entertainment at their fingertips, it's still a great and powerful tech, and it's always rewarding to see that. But yeah, you're right. It's like being face to face with that and realizing that like you're having some effect is like really cool that it has that power. I
yeah,
mean, I think
yeah.
I've been spending a lot of time thinking about what is imagination, and like
Mm,
part of just what things I think about anyway. But like part of the thing about like Carl the Collector, the show, because it's not just a show about autism. It's like a show about friends and like self-identity, like figuring out like what am I, who am I, and how am I different or the same as my friends or whatever.
yeah.
Um, that it's really about consciousness. Like what is
Mm,
consciousness and like consciousness coming in different forms, even within like human forms. Like it can mean a bunch of different things.
yeah.
Um, and beyond that, I really think about imagination. Like imagination is obviously like the root of consciousness. And if,
Mm,
what I we have this word for like imagination, but we actually don't really know what it is. And to me, I'm starting to think that like if there's proof of a higher power or a godhead or like a creative force in the universe that created everything, it's like our imagination is proof of
mm,
that thing. Because when you're in a flow state and you're creating things, like everybody says that you're like, okay, I'm channeling this thing. It's not from me. I'm like, there's whatever, there are these ideas in the ether, and like I might be able to latch onto one thing and it's like coming to me and all that. Not that it's easy and you're just a receiver,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you are an antenna for something of some kind. And we don't really know what it is. Like it's kind of an incredible mystery. And I also think about how all of society today is sort of it's the structure of it is to inhibit imagination, so that
Mm,
like the best thing for kids and for adults to be is bored. If you want to be a
yes.
creative person,
Yes.
being bored is step one. And that's painful and awful. And it's harder to do and harder to do now that we have our phones and everything else. You're
Yes.
constantly like, oh, well, look what's going on Instagram or whatever, what's going on here. Like, let me do this and let me watch this. Or maybe I got to watch three screens at once. And all of that, you're a passive
Mm,
receiver, especially if you're like doing multiple things at once. And
yes.
I'm starting to feel like there's not a conspiracy, but like the path that we've gone down as humans, even though we have like the potentially the breadth of all of human experience, like at our fingertips, we
Mm,
can't remember anything anymore. I can't remember a phone number because
yes.
you're like, oh, it's in my pocket. I don't need to know that. You're
Yes.
never bored. Like, because if you're like, it's like I always challenge myself. I'm like, when's the last time I went to the bathroom without my phone? It's like that's wrong. Like that's wrong. Like I've
Yeah,
had
yeah.
when you have that moment, you're like, oh my God, I gotta take a shit, and I'm like, where's my phone? You're like, you don't need your phone for that. Um, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so like, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this, but like I'm thinking about it a lot, and I imagination is like the biggest key mystery of the universe, and like obviously what it means to be human. And I think we have to be very careful and like fighting to keep it, because
Mm,
everything is like kind of organized so that you don't use it.
yeah.
And I think that makes, even if people aren't doing creative stuff for a career, all humans are, by virtue of being human, are creative. Like that's what humans do. Like that's what sets us apart from just being a dog looking for food all day.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Well,
dogs
it's our
need love.
imagination that separates
Yes,
us, you know?
exactly.
And like you said, for me personally, I believe it's definitely God who gave us that imagination, and
Yeah,
that because we were created in His image, we have that imbued
yeah,
in our being, that we're
yeah,
naturally all creative, and
yeah.
we just find different avenues of expressing
Totally,
that creativity. And that flow
totally.
state is, like, I think even to create, in order to create, you have to have a level of faith,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
you are believing in something that doesn't exist as yet, and
Right,
then
right,
you're bringing it to life in
right.
in some ways. So there's that leap of faith that happens when you create the idea in your head, and then it goes into your pencil and you draw it
Yeah,
out, and then suddenly it's a thing, you know.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly it. And that's magic. There's no
Yeah.
other real word for it. Like, uh,
Yeah.
it is. It's like, and it's something to be reminded of, like on a daily
Mm,
basis, of like how cool that is, that exists, and and it's like any other practice or muscle. It's like you got to use it or you'll lose it.
yeah.
Um, and I think it's like so important to just general baseline, happiness or satisfaction in life, to be using that all the time. Uh,
Mm.
so
It's a great way to think of it. Yeah, like being an artist or creating is the oldest form of magic. You
yeah,
turn
yeah, yeah,
creating something from nothing is
yeah,
magic. So
yeah. That's like that's it. I mean, really, like that is it.
yeah.
Um, and that's why it's never-endingly it's always interesting.
Mm,
Even if
mm,
we're telling ourselves the same story over and over, it's like it's endlessly fascinating. I mean, why do we tell ourselves stories? Like
yeah.
you need all that, I mean, there's plenty of people that have, done tons of study on that, especially on storytelling being like, the basis of human society and, human interaction and all that stuff. So obviously like
Mm,
that's already baked into what we are, um, but the ability to do it in a slightly new way and in a way that feels new every time is also magical.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Man, I could talk to you for hours, but I better not. I need to respect your time and stuff. So, there's two more questions I want to ask
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
before I
man. So
let you
I
go.
know I've been rambling, like I had a lot of coffee this morning, so
Uh, so, the next question I'd like to ask you is if you could give a piece of advice to the next generation of illustrator creator that is coming behind you, what would that piece of advice be?
I think just what we were just talking about, don't be afraid of boredom. Like
Mm,
go, get to a place where you are really, really bored, or use that time if you're locked up in a space where like what it's a job or whatever it is, like you have to be somewhere and you're like maybe don't look at your phone the whole time, like daydream
yeah.
and take take walks, ideally in the woods if you can, or any place that like inspires you to let your mind just like daydream and like finding that space. The other thing I would say would be like the other two things I had mentioned was like, do you
Mm,
like find your like everybody has their influences and you absorb your influences but the key is like try to make a language of yourself that are those things that you are inspired by. Like
yes.
don't jump on any trends. Like there might be a popular illustration style that everyone loves and it's like fresh and you love it, but it's like that's not going to last. Like the thing
Mm,
that's going to last is like creating your own language, and that's just basically like your reflection of like all the things that you love and are inspired by, like
mm,
kind of mix mashed up in you and pulled out and pull all the things from that and just keep pushing that thing and trying to find that little corner because that's what's going to stand out from all the other people that are like super talented. I have plenty of friends that can like they can do 10 different styles and they can do everything and it's like just do like one thing good and like
yes.
keep working on it so it turns good and
Yeah.
try to put as much of your own personality into it, your own perspective on everything that you are inspired by and like that's going to lead you to a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautifully put, you know. The secret to creativity is boredom.
Exactly.
The key to success is to be yourself
Yeah.
and tell your story from your voice. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think like another thing, and there's no way to do this artificially, but
Mm.
low level suffering in addition to boredom is what makes anything interesting.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
so it might be not great in the moment, but when you look
Mm.
back on like tough periods of your life or whatever the things were that like you had to survive or you had to do this or that, like those are all the things that like form you to have an individualized perspective that like is also universal that other people recognize because they all go through their stuff.
Yeah.
So just reckon like pull from suffering and be bored. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid of it, even
Yeah.
though
Yeah.
it's itchy and horrible feeling, and no one wants to feel uncomfortable ever. But it's like it's
Yeah.
key.
I think that's a good way of phrasing it. Getting comfortable, feeling uncomfortable. Um, we're not all in a place of suffering, but like the discomfort can be there or it can be created if necessary, even if it means pushing yourself stylistically or all the rest.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
in that position, then you can create much more fluidly.
Exactly. And when, obviously like suffering is kind of like a really strong word. I mean, it couldn't like, that's a spectrum of real suffering where you can't
Yeah,
think of
yeah,
anything else, but like maybe like just being uncomfortable in that space at the very least is like
mm,
where the creative fountainhead lies.
yeah, yeah. That's fantastic. And so, for my last question, what does the word fruitful mean to you?
Fruitful. Full of fruit. You know, fruitful is, I guess that's a good question. I mean, fruitful is like getting a good result out of whatever the process is, like whatever you're trying to make, getting through the other side of it, uh, if it has like a positive effect on another person,
Mm,
it's sort of like the fruits of your labor. That seems like a fruitful thing that
yeah,
is it makes it all worth going through whatever it is that you went through to get to that thing.
yeah. What I really like about the word fruitful versus success is with success there is failure. But with fruitfulness, it is looking at what you've created and finding gratitude
Yeah.
in the goodness that came out of it.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. That's a nice, yeah, because then it's like it's an end of its own. You know, like success isn't the end product. Like that's not the
Yes.
goal. The
Yes.
goal is like
To be more fruitful.
making it to be more fruitful. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Never thought about that, but that's it's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening to this episode of The Fruitful Life. I hope you walked away with some nuggets of wisdom. And if you did, please do me a favor and leave me a rating and a comment to let me know what you think of the show. Also, consider telling a friend that might like it. As always, be true, be you, stay fruitful.